Thank you, Achal. I wish we didn't have to have this conversation and that I could continue watching. I'm sure many of us feel the same way. Let me begin with something that I think all of us think we begin from, which is our childhood. And it's so rewarding to watch this film. I just noticed that I want to know about your childhood because I think so much of Indian modernity in general was created by looking at the world from this child's perspective. I just noticed, this I hadn't noticed before, from Gamak Ghar, that the train and the kashful, that scene, the train in your film moves in the opposite direction compared to Bakir Pachali, where it moves from this direction with the kashful. That too from a child's perspective. So 1998, that child, you were born in 1996. I want to know about your childhood, and because I've had this conversation a little while ago, how you were formed by the literary and the idea of literature, and also how you wanted to be a writer.
So I think, the way I think I see the house now, that has been a journey in itself. I was, if you see the film, there's a young kid in like a yellow T-shirt who's come with the doctor family. That is sort of based on me, but a very milder version of me, because I was the one who was mostly always either I was myself, crying about leaving, or going back to the city house, or I was the one who was not part of my cousins, so to say, because they always saw me as someone who was coming from outside in a way, because we were the ones who used to sort of go there for because our house was very close to the village actually. We live in Darbhanga town, and the village is 15 minutes away. So in fact, one of the scenes at night when they're watching the film, there are those two boys, they're discussing which films to watch. And the yellow t-shirt one says Salman Khan, and the other one goes ki tum kyun bata rahe ho, tum to so jate ho. That comes from my experience of I would recommend Salman Khan, and my cousin used to say ki tum kyun bata rahe ho, tum to chale jate ho. So that I changed to tum to so jate ho. And then in the next shot you see him sleeping. So I was the one who used to constantly be back and forth and never entirely be a part of that world, But then I think my I gravitated towards this sort of what you see in the film and how I see the house through cinema, through artwork, through literature and all that. As I was sort of reading and watching things after school.
What were you reading and watching?
It started, in cinema, firstly, it started when I was in London, and, there were all these films. Obviously, the first one is Satyajit Ray. You see that there in the film. This film is actually full of all those homages, all the hat tips to people I've sort of learned from, and so firstly there was Satyajit Ray, and then when I was in the UK, and when I was in London, there was all this Asian films that I was watching that was sort of pointing me towards this direction. Mm-hmm. The first one was Hirokazu Koreeda. He's a Japanese filmmaker I saw. In particular, the film Still Walking. And just watching that kind of cinema, because I hadn't seen anything like that, before. Encountered anything like that in cinema before. So that sort of opens up a new, room to you that you didn't know existed in a way. And then through Koreeda, I reached Yasujiro Ozu, who was, who used to make films much before in 1950s and 60s. And then I reached Hu Shaoxian, who's a Taiwanese filmmaker. And in particular, his films, The Time to Live and The Time to Die, Summer at Grandpa's. These were films where Hu Shaoxian was making about his own childhood in the rural Taiwan. And filled with all these very small moments, ordinary moments, sometimes seen from a child's perspective. And then in literature, obviously, there's Amit Chaudhary here, who's Strange and Sublime Interest has been one of the most important books for me in making Gamak Ghar. It was the book I asked everyone to read at that time, and especially in particular that one paragraph where Sandeep is sort of wondering about the houses. You know, what kind of different houses, some house has a, you know, someone doing your maths problem or all that portion, and you know how it ends with, you know, there's no point, you know, there would be no story to it. So that was, you know, one of the sort of starting and establishing things. So, and also through my photography, you know, my Gamak Ghar came much later, but then I had already started photographing the house in a way, in around, I think, 2016, 15, around that time, and I had no thought of making a film at that time. I used to think I'll make it at some point, you know, in the future, someday, when I'm ready. But I started photographing, and it took me a while to sort of, you know, even accept those photographs, because as a kid, as a child, you're always, you know, you are sent away from Bihar. You don't accept your Bihari identity so much. You are always running away from it. Like, you know, I remember I was in a boarding school in Pinjore, Chandigarh, and being a Bihari there wasn't, you know, at that age wasn't like the best of things. So I would sometimes lie that I'm from Ghaziabad because my parents had a flat here, you know. So you always are, you know, not accepting of that. So through my photographs first, I sort of came back to, you know, this place. And now that I look back on it, you know, one of my first short stories, which I wrote back in probably 9th or 8th, it's like a small horror story set in Gamak Ghar. You know, it's about someone coming back and there's no one, everyone's dead, in a way. So, you know, it was there, it was somewhere there, but it took a while, it took all these, you know, films and literature to sort of, you know, bring me back.
So, from that horror story of the people dying to moving this to cinema where the house is dying, how did that transition come? And the other thing is, you said it wasn't easy to kind of be Bihari at that time in boarding school. I wanted to know, what are the languages you live in? Because one of the things I love about your cinema is how naturally unapologetic you are about making your films in Maithili. Unlike many of us, for instance, who have forced to claim world literature as an identity, you have no such ambition. And I think that gives something to your cinema that again connects you to the trajectory of, you know, Indian modern filmmakers and writers.
I mean, so language, I wanted to be a writer, but you know, I mean, language was the one thing I sort of, because I was speaking Hindi since childhood. Maithili was spoken at my house, but you know, I learned it over the years. You know, so much of Maithili in detail I learned while making Gamak Ghar. You know, so I was mostly a Hindi speaker, and then I was reading in English, and I wanted to write in English. But I don't know, I mean, I was never very confident. And then, you know, I mean, once I picked up the camera, I just sort of realized that this is probably a better medium for me to express or, you know, just tell things. And what was your first question? Sorry.
So this movement, for instance, with people dying in the horror story, to the, you know, people, filmmakers, I'm guessing, have to cast people. You cast houses and trees. How does that casting happen?
So this was very initially in the process. I had a co-writer with me, my friend Anubhav. We were in Patna, and that's when, you know, the idea of the film actually came. We were actually working on something else, and how the film started was there was going to be some sort of renovation, you know, going to happen at the house. My mother had mentioned that, you know, we'll do like a double story or something, because all the other houses were being, you know, transformed into double stories, which would be more practical and, you know, more space and all that. And so I went back to my, you know, because I always wanted to do something there, so I thought maybe now's the time, you know, it might be too late, you know, in like a couple of years. So I thought, okay, let's do something, maybe a short film which will have the house maybe just as a backdrop. Maybe a story might take place here. And then it was, it felt like a futile exercise because we were thinking of different stories which might take place and, going in a very conventional way that this is going to be our backdrop or location as they call it in the industry. And then, I had the thought that, it's about the house. That is the only reason I'm wanting to make this. I want to make this film. So why not stick with the house? Because one of the ideas initially was because this thing comes up. Whose perspective is it? Is it a child's? Is it this character or that character? And I was like, none of them maybe. Maybe let's just stay with the house. And also, it was exciting at that time because it sounded very, it scared me a lot, and I knew it was, something I hadn't seen. So that, in that way also, and even in terms of writing, I wanted to sort of move away from everything else that I had seen and already. And I think in those terms, it is strange and sublime that had spoiled me. That I wanted to completely move away from that narrative structure and do away with the three-part thing. And Anubhav was the other person who was like a very traditional sort of. He wanted to have a structure, or as simple as he wanted to have the names of the characters mentioned, so that the audiences knows who is who and all that. So I think we only worked on the first draft together, and then it was just me writing, because also it was coming from such a personal space that in the first draft I've written the grandmother talking a certain way, and now when he's rewriting it, he's changing it to something else, which probably isn't sitting with me, because for me it wasn't about writing the correct grandmother or writing the correct structures so much. It was about what I sort of remember my grandmother as. More importantly. So I think after that point, it was only me sort of writing on my own, and then even the writing sort of went very sparse, and because of the process. When we started shooting, we realized since we were working with so many non-actors, whatever I've written isn't going to sort of work as I've thought. So we have to have those blank spaces for these non-actors, these people to sort of fill in. So the script, the first part was like, let's say it was 20-25 pages. Second part it came down to 10 pages. Last part was like 1 page. So we kept sort of going like that.
How were you filming? So as the script got leaner, how were you filming the scenes? And because just a little while ago you said you're moving from season to season, right?
So, it slowly got comfortable. Initially the first part, when we shoot the summer bit, it was not easy. It was not easy because initially most of the people, most of the cast and crew, they were not even understanding what the film is, in a way. And it was probably just me and my cinematographer who were at least on a similar page that, this is what we are aiming for. But the actors and everyone, they were quite clueless, and especially because the first part we had the biggest setup in terms of the production. We had like light men coming from Patna who had worked in the Bhojpuri film industry. We had sound people from Bombay, and everyone was like clueless. People would think that so we would be lighting up a scene of a Machhatani, we would take like an hour to light up a Machhatani shot, and the lightman would be thinking that actor aayenge aur isme baithenge. But then no, it was just the Machhatani. Right. And for most of the shoot, they all thought that hero log baad mein aayenge. Or tab shoot start hoga, but then the shoot ended just like that. Or the actors would come to me, they would be like, abhi aap master shot le rahe ho, iske baad you would put like over the shoulder. I'm like, nahi, the master shot nahi hai. And the other challenging thing, or even the ambitious thing, was to just have all of it in one take, one shot, because we were not cutting so much in scenes. So, because I wanted to have that sort of real sort of flow of time in one shot, it's there across the film also, but even in one particular shot, I wanted to have that sort of sense of time. So that would be challenging because then you need to have a structure to the scene, otherwise it's going to be, so we would decide on like certain checkpoints that, okay, we'll talk about this, then we'll talk about this, and then this. But I wouldn't give them the dialogue, so we would do it once, twice. So first take would be, let's say, 10 minutes. So then we would be like, okay, this is working, this is not working. Then we would sort of bring it down to 8 minutes, then maybe 5 minutes, and then it would be perfect. So that also took a while because in the first part, the actors were not very comfortable. It was like a whole new setup for them, the lights, the lapel mics and everything. But I think by the second, third schedule, they were bringing things to me that, okay, maybe we can try this, maybe we can try that.
Sumana, you use the mic so that you can hear.
Just a little while ago, in response to my last question, you said, just the cinematographer and I knew what we were aiming for. So I want to know what you were aiming for. Also because of this wonderful scene that I think both of us love from Dhuin. You are kind of, it would be cheap to say, this is not a fictional mode, I don't like that word. But you're kind of giving us, directing us, nudging us to categorize you in a certain tradition of filmmaking. You're saying docudrama, right? What is, if you didn't have to give in to the commercial aspect of the genre, how would you characterize your films? I'm not just saying give a name for the genre you're working in, because you're working with, you make this clear, actor, non-actor, all of that and everything. Kiarostami and Darbhanga. I want to know your thoughts about this.
First question was something else.
Cinematographer
I mean, what one is aiming for is never really, clear during the process, at least. You are sort of aiming for something, but you don't really know what you're aiming for. That's the whole, fun of it and the process of it, really. Because, you're sort of finding the film as you go along,
Yes.
At least in Gamak, maybe I had a more clearer picture than what I had in Dhuin, or even, the new film that I've done. It's now, the picture is now getting even more, more abstract or more vague when you're starting. Gamak, probably it was still like a more clearer picture, and it was as simple as, the seasons, the passage of time, and if I can sort of, make people feel that, that, because it was also coming through, it was something I was also attempting in my photography, and I was photographing these trees over time. So it was something that I wanted to at that time try in cinema, try through the, time and, but it's that's the, while you're doing it, you know things that you don't want, but you're still sort of, finding what you are, going for. And the other question was, sorry.
Because you mentioned time.
Yes.
I was thinking of so many responses.
The other one was the actor non-actor thing. Huh? So
the genre.
yes, I don't know what to, because Gamak was also being called docu-fiction, but I don't really enjoy that term so much. Even a documentary, or fiction. So that scene in particular, it comes from Kiarostami, obviously, because I have become a big, admirer of his films, and one of the main reasons is that how he is so self-reflexive, that, you see his films, but there's no sort of, I wouldn't like to call it pretense, but there's no sort of, that this is a film. It's all accepted that this is Kiarostami making a film about something, So I really like that sort of quality about his films. So I wanted to have that as well in Dhuin, in some way. And just some inside jokes and all that, because at Gamak Ghar, Abhinav was like a proper actor. Abhinav is the person who's playing Pankaj in Dhuin, the main character. So he was there in Gamak, and he performed really well. He's the one who's there till the end. He's there in 98 as a 19, 20-year-old. Then he's there in the second part, older, married. And then he's there in the third part, with a belly and like rough and like grey hair. So So he was the one who had to work the hardest, on his body language, on everything, on his speech and how it changes over time. And when the film came out, he was passed as a non-actor. So it was just something I wanted to play around with, that idea of, and because here in this scene, all the other three you see are non-actors. And Abhinav is an actor who's playing, a character. And all three of them, they are actually playing themselves. Shishir is actually Shishir in real life. Dipesh is Dipesh. Sumit is Sumit. They are all, Sumit is a young filmmaker, Dipesh is an old filmmaker. And Shishir is not a bully like that though, but but they were all playing, a version of themselves. So I think it was just that.
Rituparna Sengupta, not the Bengali actress, but someone who's written about your films, as you know, asked me to ask you this question, and this relates with what you said. Said, please ask Achal about his being drawn to the figure of who's left behind at home and who keeps returning homewards. Guddu Bhaiya in Gamak and Pankaj in Dhuin are the same actor playing these roles, as if in continuation of the same narrative across successive generations.
I don't know what the answer to that should be, but now that she's put it so well, and now that I think of my new film, it fits the idea perfectly, because in my new film it's about a filmmaker who comes back to Darbhanga because his father is not well, and then it's about all the other people around him who are in Darbhanga, who are part of that world, and he is there as a filmmaker looking at them, and there's his childhood friend, there's his older sister, and there's his father. So I don't really have a clear answer to this, but I think it is about, it is because I have been someone who's been out of Darbhanga since a very early age, and that really sort of, that identity thing really keeps bothering you, because you're not from there, but then you go back and you make these films which are from there. And so it's probably an answer I'm looking through these films, and not even an answer, but just something. Yeah.
You said you were photographing the house and these trees. So I think I'll come to it from my own perspective as a writer. I think some of us, it's like a found moment. We find a slogan, an anthem, a song, something, and we want to hold on to it. We don't know where to put it, but we know we will put this into something that we write, a poem, a story. So did it work for you like that? Not necessarily the house, but I'm thinking of the two trees, the first in Gamak, and of course that fabulous tree which is, doesn't have life anymore, but that particular scene you showed us in Dhuin.
How did you find these trees?
Find these trees, so Dhuin one was very accidental, honestly. Dhuin, because it operates in a very different space, very different kind of a story. So, ideally there was no need for a tree like there is in Gamak, But then we thought, so the airport was like fresh in Darbhanga at that time. It had just opened like a month ago. And plane watching was a thing, actually a thing. It still is, not as much as you see in the film, but people used to go there and look at planes flying. So we thought we'll do a scene. That was the scene which I had added at the very last moment, because the airport had, it was like in plan for a long time, and then when we planned to shoot, it just opened up like a month back. So we thought, let's go and do a scene there. And at that time, I remember there were only 3 flights from Darbhanga. They would come and they would take off. So one was for Bangalore and Delhi and Bombay. So when we reached, one flight had already taken off. So we had like two more takes to go. So then we started setting it up, and then we missed the second flight as well. And we were just looking for a place to sort of have this scene, play out. We had no idea what it would look like visually. But then we came across this tree on which people were actually climbing. So we had little time before the third plane would take off, the final plane of the day, and we were just trying to understand how, we were trying to sort of look at people, how they are there in that space. And so Abhinav was there, and I asked him to sort of climb the tree, try climbing the tree. And I know Abhinav, his physicality and how clumsy he is in certain moments. So I asked him to climb and he slipped the first time. So I was like, okay, we'll do this. So that ended up being there, and then we also had to hide our camera because it's also a defense airport. So we were like very discreet, like with a shawl ready. So whenever someone comes, we would put a shawl on it. I had to shoot from across the street, which also lends a very, those cars passing and all that. And we just asked them to just do whatever they want to do, So we kept rolling for a bit, trying different things, this and that, this and that. And then when the plane came, we were ready this time, and it just happened also well that those buffaloes came in, and one of the buffaloes are also looking at the plane. Because, for the buffaloes also a plane is new there. So it was like that. And Gamak, I've known those trees for the last 10 years now. After I graduated from school, I was photographing in Darbhanga. Like I used to just drive around everywhere and find these trees. And over time, what started happening was that I would just keep returning to a tree and keep photographing it across time. And Darbhanga, you have all these. The monsoon is extreme. The winter is all the foggy months with winter. So that started coming in my photographic world. So I had a series of a tree with like 15, 17 pictures, all shot in different seasons. So ideally, I would have wanted something like that in Gamak. Just one tree seen across time. But then because the span of the film was like 20 years, I thought it wouldn't look like it's aging 20 years. So I couldn't have gone with that because ideally I would have wanted to do like a same shot, same angle of a tree, just, looking different. So we decided we'll do different trees, we'll find trees which are like, standing alone, in a field or whatever. And the first shot was never planned that way. It was just one of those days we were shooting at the house and we saw the sky was like, the perfect sky that we could ask for, and it was like blue with those cotton clouds, and so we just left everything and we ran to that tree. We drove to that tree like 20-30 minutes away, and then we had to trek down from the highway almost 2 kilometers, and then we put the camera there and we got the shot. And that's how it ended up becoming the opening shot, because we had that duration and we could place, the titles over it.
But you're not using any of these to prettify the scenes, right? I mean, in Dhuin, for instance, you're using that moment with humor, but with also something. There's always something happening. For instance, you use that moment to say, let's shoot it in the Darbhanga style. It's almost like an insider joke, except that it amplifies inside our heads. The thing that follows is like Shah Rukh Khan. So what is the Darbhanga style then? That makes us question this, right? I mean, so again, for me, and this is not a question, just a response, that you are annotating these things, these moments, with something more than, what you are showing us. And because you said this happened accidentally, how did this moment of the Darbhanga style and that Shah Rukh Khan pose, how did that come? Accidentally as well?
I mean, it's Abhinav, honestly. He's one of the co-writers also on Dhuin, and whenever we are doing the scene, we talk a lot about things and, try out different things. So for this Pankaj character, we tried understanding him in different ways. Obviously, firstly, we had the reference of Prashant, on who's, but we also wanted to sort of take 2 steps back from Prashant and, also have some judgment on, who he is as a person, as an actor, and then try out different things from there. That was one reason why I didn't, of course Prashant is also an actor, and people keep asking me why did I not take Prashant, and that is probably to just have this sort of, 2 steps back and judgment, because, there are scenes where, in a way, as a filmmaker, I'm also probably making fun of him, in a way, So to have that sort of, and so it was just one of those things that, Abhinav and I kind of discussed, and we used to actually improvise a lot before shooting even one particular scene or just in general. We would just decide on a scene or a situation, and he would play one character, I would play someone else, or there would be like 3-4 of us, and so just to have this back and forth and then try to understand where all we could go, So that Shah Rukh Khan, that these were one of the many options we had thought of, and there are so many other things we had probably shot, or especially the scene that we just saw, the one where those filmmakers are there. We shot like for 2 days, 30-minute scenes, almost like 30-minute conversations, which had everything spanning from Nawazuddin Siddiqui to Om Puri to different things. And now it was up to me in the edit to sort of, either have this or that, to make those decisions,
Right.
So, I mean, it was enough to sort of, just bring that in.
One last response or question from me before we open this for questions. My students keep asking me, pestering me almost, about how titles come to creative practitioners. I was thinking of Dhuin. In both you have the fog, and many times while watching your films, which I've watched a few times, I would think of some of whom had impaired vision, and the connection between impaired vision and inspired vision, as it were. So I was thinking, these people, whom we do not treat as a left behind people at all, but something about their provincial character, a centrifugal urge that we find in Prashant, for instance. This need to climb up on a tree, your camera at the other end of the street, looking, the kind of vision. I'm not going to call it impaired at all, because we wouldn't have got impressionism otherwise. But the fog, in both, you showed us the fog in Gamak Ghar as well, and you said it was important for you in Gamak. So how did these titles come to you, and what is this aesthetic about the fog or fogginess?
I think the titles come to me at the very end. Like Dhuin was called 100 different things before.
Do you remember some?
Yes, I mean, for the longest time it was called The Day After, and I was not really, I was not fond of it at all. Especially because it was in English and I wanted to have something, in Marathi or Hindi probably. It was also called, probably for a day, it was called Darbhanga Junction. And it sounded like a thriller then. Gamak Ghar also, Gamak Ghar was called, while we were shooting, it was called Gamak Ghar. And then it just sort of happened that, I realized Gamak is how we call it, So from there it became Gamak Ghar. And I decided to, for some reason I decided to spell it as Gamak, which now has people calling it Gamak Ghar. And then people also confused the meaning of it, and one initial reviews had it calling the fragrant house, like the fragrance, Gamak, But sometimes I enjoy that confusion, that people don't really understand what it really means. So I enjoy that sometimes. Even with Dhuin, people keep asking what does it really mean. And Dhuin happened very much in the end, the title. I was not happy with Day After or Darbhanga Junction or whatever. We were all brainstorming, looking here and there, thinking of things. And for some reason I wanted something very light, very, and something to do with fog. And fog was called different things. We would call it Kohra, all those words. And then Dhund also. But then
Kohra released by then?
No, Kohra was not released. Kuhasa is also what we say. And Dhuin is a much lesser used word, Dhuin. So someone said Dhuin, a friend of mine, and then it was like, it sounded just perfect because Dhuin works in two ways, in Mathili especially. Dhuin is also Dhund, and Dhuin is also Dhund, apne dhun mein hai wo.
Okay.
So then it was perfect, and also with the meaning thing that it doesn't make it clear that what it is, And that's how I came to Dhuin. And even with the new film, I'm editing it, everything is happening, but I still don't have a title. It'll come at the very end.
And will you tell us, share with the rest of us, how much you made? How much it cost you to make
Dhuin, we shot it in, the production budget was 50,000 rupees. Just some samosas and some petrol for the car, and the local actors, they were all paid, and that's about it. And then we the post-production, which is music and color grading and sound mixing, that cost us like 4.5 lakhs. So like 5 lakhs Dhuin was made.
Questions, responses? I'll come to you. Do you mind if you
First of all, I just want to say that your Instagram account is one of my favorites. So, like, I look forward to all the posts. My question is, I know that in a way you're trying to tell your story. What I've noticed is that most of the cast, also the story is very Brahminical of the cast. Except in Gamak Ghar, I think the person who comes and takes care of the house. So, you also want to tell a story of, like, I'm sure like Darbhanga is not just Brahmins. Yeah, so, like, thoughts?
I mean, it's honestly something which I have also, been trying to understand and learn, and and the other thing which I also sort of realized was that, I can't really be the one to, I'm not the only filmmaker from Darbhanga who can be the all-encompassing storyteller of Darbhanga, in a way. Because, like, I think last year someone came to me and they were like, okay, you're making this, but why not this? Or why not that? And I was like, I can't do that probably, because I don't really have that sort of, that experience, span of it. And I consider myself very limited as a fiction creator or a fiction writer, that I'm not very, I can only write about things that I know of, or I have sort of personally experienced. So I mean, it's something which I'm still working on as an artist, and still, because on the other end, I don't want to keep myself limited as just telling my stories or my because that shouldn't really be it, probably. But it's still a learning stage for me.
Would you like to come here?
Yeah, come where?
In front of the camera?
Thanks for coming to Ashoka University, Achal. It's wonderful to actually hear you, to meet you as well. And we've made 2 remarkable films. We've followed one remarkable film and another really remarkable film, which is not easy. I mean, congratulations on that. It takes greater courage than one would imagine, especially now, today, not just in India, but anywhere. Just a couple more observations, and then I want to ask you a couple of questions. With this Gamak Ghar, I keep saying Gamak because I'm a Hindustani classical singer, and Gamak is a particular kind of tan.
Yes.
So, but with Gamak Ghar, the opening shots were wonderful. I was wondering whether one could have a film only of those opening shots. They made me think of Manikon. I don't know whether, because he has a lot of shots in films like Uski Roti, which are almost stills, one still after another, holding up the narrative, as it were, which you get absorbed by. Somehow you get seduced entirely by those still shots, and that was happening to me here. I was getting absorbed by them. And then there is the kind of appearance of Kiarostami in some way in the second film, leading me to think, this is wonderful what he's doing. I mean, your shot of the person the protagonist walking past the park or playground, in my memory is much longer than it actually is. Because when I began to watch it, I thought, how long is this going to go on, and how long will he pull it off? Because there's this extraordinary movement and repetitions of the iron railings. I guess what I see there is a mixture of scripting and the non-scripted. And I'm assuming that, I don't know, Ball De Do, that is scripted. And now the extraordinary traffic on passing, obstructing our view of the tree, that must be unscripted.
Yes.
But it's extraordinary. And then a lot of the things on the playground, I presume, are unscripted. All of it.
Yes.
Even the guy asking for the ball.
No, that is
Scripted. So there are bits that are scripted and a lot of it is unscripted.
While we are shooting, we are very much sort of, responding to the reality in a way. No, it's fine. So when we went there the first day, the final take we did was on the third day.
Yeah.
So first day we go there, we only have the initial thought that, okay, Abhinav is going to walk from here to there, and Anand, who's on camera, is going to be following him. So we're doing that, and then suddenly some kids appear with like balloons, selling balloons. So we thought, okay, this might be interesting. Let's try this on the next day. Let's get a kid with a balloon and let's try this.
Yeah.
So we come, because also it's in the evening, so we only have a small window to shoot. And the idea is Abhinav is going to be walking in his thoughts, just going. Next day we come, we tried a balloon thing, but it doesn't really work all that much. And then lots of people are also looking into the camera. And the ground also feels different on different days. Some days you have a larger crowd, some days it's different. So it was all different. Second day when we are shooting, the ball comes accidentally. And while shooting, I just tell Abhinav that pass the ball. Just to see how it sort of, looks in the camera. And then he runs for the ball, and then Anand has to run with him. So that looks different, that is something else. And then the sort of his walking pace changes after he passes the ball. So third day we actually got someone to be there in the ground, and then I was the one placing the ball so that we know from where to where Abhinav is going to run, so that Anand has an idea when he has to sort of pick his pace and then slow down, because it's tricky, in that way, because it's such a small setup. And also, that scene, I feel it could only have happened on two extremes. Either you are like Sanjay Leela Bhansali, where you're controlling everything, the whole ground is like your stage, or this way, which is, you are like YouTubers on road. You're just doing something. So we had.
So there are tiny bits of scripting, and most of it is as it's happening, and that those decisions about responding to reality are what make your cinema. Really wonderful. The questions I want to ask, and I think that is a great question from the gentleman there. But I think your movies are very un-Brahminical. I mean, if one takes Brahminical as a quality, it's an adjective. It's an adjective about certain qualities which we might associate with the Brahmin's response. And in your cinema, I don't find anything Brahminical at all. It is quite the opposite of such a sensibility. What I wanted to ask was, when those people, when you were quite young making your first film, and they said, "Hero kabhi aa raha hai aur ab kya hoga?" Did you feel a tiny twinge of nervousness? What am I doing here? Is it okay? Because all these people don't seem to know what I'm doing, what my ambition is. They don't seem to be on the same page. Most of the people here don't seem to understand what I'm up to. So while you might have thought, okay, great, I'm up to something completely original, was a part of you also slightly nervous that, do I know exactly what I'm doing? And the second question is, why is there so little, relatively speaking, non-narrative art house cinema in India compared to other cultures? Or at least that's how I see it. Relatively speaking, why is there so little non-narrative art house cinema where we allow just the image and what's happening in it to create its own narrative compared to other film cinematic cultures? Why is there so little of it in India? Also, it seems to me maybe it's a wrong impression. Maybe there is a lot of it. That's what it seems to me. So there were two questions, one about nervousness and one about non-narrative.
Thank you. So yes, obviously I was very nervous. Not so much in the sense that, that they are not really understanding, because there was, obviously it's a very thin line between, confidence and, underconfidence, and you have to sort of operate somewhere in between. But mostly because, mostly because, Gamak Ghar depended on people coming back, after certain stages to, because we had to do it across different seasons, So we had to get together 4 times over a span of like 7 months. So when the first schedule was happening and the way it was going, I thought nobody's going to come back. That was the main nervousness initially. The bigger nervousness came much later when I'm sort of editing the film and, seeing it, and it's working for me, but you still don't really know that whether it's going to work for anyone else or, but you still know what you're trying to do. But it's that sort of doubt. But I don't think that was coming from the crew members. Not really. There is some bit of it, but you still sort of you still have some. I think I've lost that over time, probably a little bit. That because I think it was also there's also some naivety there. Because I was young. We were all 21 at that time when we were making Gamak. So some of that confidence also comes from there. That confidence comes from there. But over time, I've become more and more doubtful with things, and I keep questioning things more and more. Especially with this new film, I shot it last winter. Last winter, I mean like 2023 January, and I'm still working on the edit because I'm still sort of figuring out things. So it's the similar phase as what I was when I was editing Gamak, but this time it's taking much longer to sort of just understand that this is what I wanted to do, and this is how I wanted to do it. But you still sort of end up being unsure of things all the time, because also it feels new, it feels different and all that. And the second question was
the relative paucity of non-narrative cinema of a particular kind.
I mean, that's again a very there are films still, but they don't really end up reaching the audience, But even that number is relatively very small. And I think one of the reasons is also, because of the support that one gets, in those different film cultures, If we talk about Japan or, Europe especially, there's all the, there's government support, there's state funding, all of that is there in place where, it's much easier to sort of, make those films, I think. But India it's very hard to, even at that stage to sort of, in India you have certain film labs or, certain co-productions happening, but the script is also, treated at that stage that, there's, I don't think there's complete control by the filmmaker,
What about China? What do you think about China?
China, China is, I feel it's, at this current time, it's still slightly more complex to understand because, because of the authorities sort of controlling things so much. But I've seen filmmakers who I loved, especially Jia Sankhe, who's made wonderful films, Still Life and The World and The Platform and Pickpocket, wonderful films. So China has had, these generation of filmmakers over time, but especially the newer ones, even more newer ones. There's one called An Elephant Sitting Still, which is a 4-hour long film, and even smaller films which are doing really well. There was one called The Cloud in a Room. But in India, I think if you hear about all these the more popular commercial art house films, they're all made in terms of in sort of this co-production setup, which is money coming in from the European countries, where they also end up having some say in the film. So it's not entirely like a film like a Masan or a Lunchbox, is not entirely made as the filmmaker wants it to be. It's made more so much that how it will sell in the foreign markets. So like tiny decisions like Masan, Neeraj Given probably wanted to have a folk song in the ending, but the producers felt that Indian Ocean song would fit better. So tiny decisions like that. Lunchbox was like a super hit script, at the script level only, when it was just written. It was like Sundance, winner, whatever, at the script level. So it was, already posed as, this film that is going to be this and that. So, those decisions then start coming in at that stage only. And the other thing which I feel is, this is something which, Truffaut said long ago, when independent cinema or the new wave was just, happening, just arriving. He said, and he was talking about the word auteur, which is, so much used nowadays, almost, overused in a way. And he said that, being an auteur isn't really, that you are writing your own films. It's not so much about writing. He said the auteurs with the coming sort of, form of filmmaking are going to be people who are also producing their own films. Because then they'll have complete control. Unless you're producing it, it's not entirely your film. All those decisions are being sort of, being taken by someone else at some level at least. So being a producer and a director is going to be what, an auteur is going to be in the recent sort of filmmaking format.
So I watched Dhuin first and Gamak Ghar much later in 2023 when I came back to movie for the Diwali.
Yeah.
So I liked Dhuin so much that I watched it multiple times over the years. And the scene with the plane and the buffaloes, when I watched it for the first time, my first question was, how did they shoot this? So that got answered today. Apart from that, there was one scene where the main character searches up how to cry, and for some reason it's such a beautiful scene to me, and I feel like every scene from Dhuin can be watched individually and it would still give a narrative which might not fit into the movie, but it would still have a narrative of its own. Now, I saw that Gamak Ghar has like a lot of still work in camera, while Dhuin has a lot of movement in the camera. Was this like choice that you made, and why was it? Yeah, this is a question that I have.
That scene was one of the most important for us because initially we were very clear that we don't want to see him actually act. We don't want to, as audience, we don't want to judge him on his acting, so to say, because we only see the Nukkad Natak in the beginning, which is a different kind of acting altogether. It's not the acting that he wants to go to Bombay for. So I, as a filmmaker, I didn't want to see him as an actor. I didn't want to judge Pankaj's character on how good he's an actor. But we really wanted to do this one scene where we sort of just understand that what kind of a training or what kind of acting does he aim for. So we had different options. We wanted to first try all those different options. So one of them was maybe he's watching like an inspirational video by one of the actors who's made big from there. So probably a Manoj Bajpayee or a Pankaj Tripathi, But then Pankaj Tripathi is for Pankaj Tripathi there. So here then we started thinking of something else. What else could an actor, someone wants to be an actor, what else could he watch? Or what else could he do? The other option was maybe because actors are very, they keep watching their own performances, their own work themselves on the screen. So we thought, what if he's watching something that he's done? Maybe he's watching the play that the Nukkad Natak that he performed just that afternoon, or maybe a short film that he's. But then that also felt very, I don't know. It didn't really fit well with me, and then we decided that he'll try like a famous, like a popular scene from a film, which is more timely, like a film which has come out recently. So at that time, I think Joker had come out, which had Joaquin Phoenix in it. So we thought, okay, maybe he can look in the mirror and he can try a Joker laugh. But then I think this came up, and I mean, this seemed just perfect, and just the idea of trying to cry, that sort of one of the ideas was that whatever he's doing, whether it is watching a Pankaj Tripathi video or trying to look in the mirror and cry or whatever, watching his own performance, one of the main ideas was that there is going to be this interruption by the train, because we were constantly working around that this place is right next to a railway station. The trains just go, right in front of the house. So how do we bring that in slowly, because we only see how close it is on the next day when he storms out of the house after having an argument with his father. So on the first day, we just wanted to establish that, there is this sort of interruption there. And we wanted to have that interruption or, certain things like that across the film, in different manner. Like even that gate climbing comes from a similar sort of, idea that there is going to be some obstacle in a way. So that interruption was also probably part of that. So whatever that scene would have been, there would be this interruption after which he would stop, because it's just too loud to sort of concentrate. So in the end, we figured out this acting mode thing, and then we thought we'll not use something because we were not finding anything perfect on YouTube. Perfect in a sense that how we want it to be, how we want to shape it. So Abhinav, being such a fantastic performer, such a fantastic improviser, and very imaginative, that two of the scenes I'll tell you. One is when he climbs on the gate. So the original idea was that he's just going to climb from this side to that side, and then Shishir will call him and tell him that cigarette le ke aao, so he'll have to go back. That was the original idea. And when we go there to shoot, there is this guard passing, and this was the university campus. We are shooting from inside the university campus, which was not allowed. We had to apply, and then it was like 1 lakh per day. So that would have crossed all the budgets for the film. So we thought, let's just be like, take a shawl with us and like chota sa tripod, and we'll be very discreet, and So I was giving cues to Abhinav on the call that he's doing 2 phone calls. First he's talking to someone else, so he's talking to me only. Then I'm only Shishir, I'm only calling him later. And then a guard passes by while we are shooting. Even though the guard doesn't know that we're shooting, he passes by and he looks at Abhinav climbing and he says, कि घुस जाएगा तब समझ में आएगा इन लोगों को, something like that. So I'm like, let's put something like that, and I tell Abhinav on call, let's do a improvisation where a guard scolds you, and you are responding to that, and then he tells you to go back. And now, because we're shooting the scene, we can't really do like a chatpat casting and get someone to. So Abhinav was like, I'll do it on my own. So he's imagining a guard there, and he's just responding. There is nothing coming from there.
Nice.
He's just responding. He's just, कि क्या हुआ? इधर ही जाना है. Just that. And then 2 months later, we bring the sound person and we get someone to respond to these dialogues now. कि guard का dialogue ये सब होगा. So similarly for this scene, because we couldn't find like a perfect video for the crying thing, he imagined something in his head, where he's smiling at some point and then he's trying to cry. And then we made a custom-made video for him, where which fits his sort of performance. So when he's smiling, we make the person say something, something slightly funny that that smile fits, and then sort of just tailor-made for his performance there. So these 2 scenes were done like that, completely in post-production in sound.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful.
And you had some other questions?
Yeah, I asked about the moving camera and the still camera.
Very early on, I realized, moving a camera is a major thing. It's it's not something which can be just misused or And Gamak, because it was coming from that space where it had to be, the idea was that it is going to be these still images. Because one of the ideas was that it has to be photographic, like those photo albums. That one feels like they're flipping through someone else's family album, and that's about it. You don't get to know anything more, just how much you see in a family album. So the idea was we'll keep it, photographic as much as possible. So we do that in every sort of every aspect, even in color grading, we treat it as photographs, you know. And one of the things which that was fine, but then when we were doing Dhuin being such a small project where we are not, you know, thinking that we are making a feature film or, you know, that was the best thing about making Dhuin for me. Because after making Gamak, you make this, you build this pressure for yourself that, you know, now you have to make your second film. And that was, you know, that was very strong at that time because Gamak had come out and, you know, all these, you get all these calls from these Bombay people that, you know, I for example, I get a call from Pankaj Tripathi and, you know, he says ki, तुम्हारे साथ film करना है अगला, that Bihar में करेंगे and all that. And I get excited, you know, I am like, हाँ, अब मैं Pankaj Tripathi को सोच के ही लिखूंगा. You know, so I was in that phase where I'm, you know, I'm very much under this, you know, impression of, you know, I'm now going to make my second film. And what is my second film going to be? So, and then Dhuin just happened, you know, it just, the whole process, you know, actually, it's like Prashant tells me something, I think, okay, let's make a film here, 15 days of writing, 5 days of pre-production, and then 15 days of shooting. And from Prashant telling me that, you know, this has happened, Prashant actually told me that he took his father for a job to a neighboring city on a bike on a winter morning. That's it. And from here the film sort of sprang, and then I called Abhinav, I called Anand. 15 days I wrote it with Prashant, with my co-writer friend Anubhav. And then Abhinav and Anand come in Darbhanga. We start prepping and we shoot, and the whole thing is done in like 1.5 months. So we never had time to think that we are making, you know, second film really. So while we are doing it, we feel so free in terms of, you know, that we are trying to learn things here. We are free to try things here, you know. And that is where it sort of came in that, you know, let's try moving the camera. Let's understand how a camera movement works, and let's have it, you know, motivated, not just a camera movement for the sake of it, but, you know, with the character. So there's a whole then graph of it, of how we sort of build it over time. So we start moving it slowly, you know. I think the first one is when he storms out of the house and we pan with him and we see the train. And then there's one camera moment which is from the back. We see bits of it initially, then in the afternoon at some point, and then finally at night when he's, you know, because that was always there, that walk at night. So we had to sort of, you know, build towards it. You know, so we try doing it initially here and there, and once you start doing it, it's very exciting, you know, just to understand how it works and, you know, do it in different ways, especially with the car going around, you know. So, I mean, we were just learning and understanding and all that. So, and now with my third film, I'm like, you know, built more on it, you know, understood it slightly better than what I did in Dhuin, and then, you know, done it in a more extensive way probably.
The car moving around was also a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
How
and
do
the
you,
light.
Yeah, because natural environment building is like one of the most beautiful things that.
So that's something which, you know, I'm sorry to Darbhanga has this, the ground you see, it's like the Maidan which every city usually has, you know, and that Maidan, that Raj ground as it's called, has these, you know, whenever an important person has come to Darbhanga, they've made a new helipad there. So I remember, I think 2002 or 3, APJ Abdul Kalam came. So they made the first helipad, you know. Then over the years, Nitish Kumar आए तो एक नया बना दिया, फिर अब मोदी आते हैं तो एक नया बना देते हैं. So there are like 3 helipads. And these helipads have become like the perfect place to learn. That's where I've also learned driving. You know, the initial couple of days I've just done this and then this. So 2 ways. So, and those वो lessons भी वहीं पे वो करवाते हैं. Starting वहीं पे होती है. So it's like, you know, and that's where the conversation is also going to happen, and it just went fit perfectly, you know. So, yeah.
I come also from a city that's like a second tier, third tier city. So I could relate to that. Like I've seen this, but how would someone think of doing this as a scene was like very beautiful to me.
You know, initially, that car, I thought it was selling lottery tickets. Because in Shiliguri, where I am from, such cars sell lottery tickets. So that was, I thought, no, today I checked, it wasn't lottery tickets, it was a train driving training school. Thank you all very much for staying with us. I think it's 8. Achal, thank you very, very much, and I hope you'll come again. We'll watch Dhuin together, and also his third film, sorry. And yeah, what else do I say? Thank you. Thank you to Achal, and many good wishes to Achal Chitra.
Thank you.
That's a beautiful name. Thank you.